Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Welcome to today's reading from Sri Caitanya Charitamrita, Madhya Lila, chapter 8, verse number 156. We will be continuing from. And yesterday we finished on text number 155, where we learned that Hladini is the aspect of bliss of the Lord, Sandhini is of the eternal existence, and Samvit is of cognizance, which is also accepted as knowledge. So, just like Satchid Anand, Hladini is Anand, and Samvit is Chit, knowledge, and Sandhini is Sat, which is eternal. Mukham karoti vachalam pangum langhayate girim yat kripa tamham vande Shri Gurum Dinatarinam Paramananda Madhavam Sri Chaitanya Ishwaram Hari Om. That's verse 156 of the chapter 8 of Madhya Lila. Hladini Sandhini Samvit Dvai Eka Sarva Samashraye Hlad Tap Kari Mishra Tvai no Guna Varjite. My dear Lord, you are the transcendental reservoir of all transcendental qualities. Your pleasure potency, existence potency, and knowledge potency are actually all one internal spiritual potency. The conditioned soul, although actually spiritual, sometimes experiences pleasures, sometimes pain, and sometimes a mixture of pain and pleasure. This is due to his being touched by matter, but because you are above all material qualities, these are not found in you. Your superior spiritual potency is completely transcendental, and for you there is no such thing as relative pleasure, pleasure mixed with pain, or pain itself. This is a quotation from the Vishnu Puran 1.12.69. And coincidentally, we were doing the reading from the Bhagavad-Gita chapter 9, where we read that Lord is all spiritual, Lord's body is all spiritual. So why Lord is going to feel anything what we feel, or how we suffer in these three modes of material nature, and how our body, which is made of matter, it suffers. Lord is totally spiritual. Verse number 157. Krishna ke ahlade tate naam hladini se shakti dware sukha aswade apani. The potency called Hladini gives Krishna transcendental pleasure. Through this pleasure potency, Krishna personally tastes all spiritual pleasure. Verse number 158. Sukha rupa Krishna kare sukha aswadana Bhakta Gane Sukha Dite Hladini Karana. Lord Krishna tastes all kinds of transcendental happiness, although he himself is happiness personified. The pleasure relished by his pure devotees is also manifested by his pleasure potency. So if we are in tamasic modes, or the mode of ignorance, then Mahamaya works on us, and if we are in the Sattva Guna or the Bhakti, we are in Bhakti, then Yogamaya, she helps us. Verse number 159. Hladinira Sara Amsha Tara Prema Nam Ananda Chinmay Rasa Premera Akhyan. The most essential part of this pleasure potency is love of Godhead, the Prema. Consequently, the explanation of love of Godhead is also a transcendental mellow full of pleasure. Verse 160. Premera Paramasara Mahabhava Jani Sei Mahabhava Roop Radha Thakurani. The essential part of love of Godhead is called Mahabhav, transcendental ecstasy, and that ecstasy is represented by Srimati Radharani. Verse 161, Tayor api ubhayor madhye radhika sarvathadika Mahabhavas Swarupeyam Gunair Ati Variyasi. Among the gopis of Vrindavan, Srimati Radharani and another gopi are considered chief, but when we compare the gopis, it appears that Srimati Radharani is most important because her real feature expresses the highest ecstasy of love. The ecstasy of love experienced by other gopis cannot be compared to that of Srimati Radharani. Purport. This is a quotation from Srila Rupa Goswami Ujjwal Neelamani Radha Prakarana number 3. Verse 162. Premera Swarupa Dekha Deha Prema Vibhavita Krishnera Prayasi Shrestha Jagate Vidita. The body of Srimati Radharani is a veritable transformation of love of Godhead. She is the dearmost friend of Krishna, and this is known throughout the world. Verse 163. Ananda Chinmay Rasa Prati Bhavitabhis Tabhir ya eva nija rupataya kalabhi golok eva nivasati akhilatma bhuto govindamadi purusham tam aham bhajami. I worship Govinda, the primeval Lord, who resides in his own realm Golok with Radha, who resembles his own spiritual figure and who embodies the ecstatic potency Hladini. Their companions are her confidants who embody extensions of her bodily form and who are imbued and permeated with ever blissful spiritual rasa. Purport. This is a quotation from the Brahma Samhita 5.37. Verse number 164. Sai Mahabhava Haya Chintamani Sar Krishna Vancha Purana Kare Ei Karya Tanra. That supreme ecstasy of Srimati Radharani is the essence of spiritual life. Her only business is to fulfill all the desires of Krishna. Verse number 165. Mahabhava Chintamani Radhar Swarupa Lalitadi Sakhi Tanra Kaya Vyuha Rupa. Srimati Radharani is the topmost spiritual gem, and other gopis, Lalita, Vishakha, and so on, are expansions of her spiritual body. Verse number 166. Radha Prati Krishna Sneha Sugandhi Udvartana Tate Ati Sugandhi Deha Ujjwala Varana. Srimati Radharani's transcendental body is brilliant in luster and full of all transcendental fragrances. Lord Krishna's affection for her is like a perfumed massage. Purport. Sugandhi Udvartana refers to a paste made of several perfumes and fragrant oils. This paste is massaged all over the body, and in this way the body's dirt and perspiration are removed. Srimati Radharani's body is automatically perfumed, but when her body is massaged with the scented paste of Lord Krishna's affection, her entire body is doubly perfumed and made brilliant and lustrous. This is the beginning of Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami's description of Srimati Radharani's transcendental body. This description, found in verses 165 to 181, is based on a book by Srila Raghunath Das Goswami known as Premam Bhoja Maranda. Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur's translation of the original Sanskrit text reads as follows. The love of the gopis for Krishna is full of transcendental ecstasy. It appears to be a brilliant jewel, and enlightened by such a transcendental jewel, Radharani's body is further perfumed and decorated with kunkuma. In the morning, her body is bathed in the nectar of compassion, in the afternoon in the nectar of youth, and in the evening in the nectar of luster itself. In this way, the bathing is performed and her body becomes as brilliant as the Chintamani jewel. She is dressed in various kinds of silken garments, one of which is her natural shyness. Her beauty is more and more enhanced, being decorated with the red kunkuma of beauty itself and the blackish musk of conjugal love. Thus her body is decorated with different colors. Her ornaments embody the natural symptoms of ecstasy, trembling, tears, jubilation, stunning, perspiration, faltering of the voice, bodily redness, madness, and dullness. In this way, her entire body is bedecked with these 9 different jewels. Over and above this, the beauty of her body is enhanced by her transcendental qualities, which constitute the flower garland hanging on her body. The ecstasy of love for Krishna is known as dhira and adhira, sober and restless. Such ecstasy constitutes the covering of Srimati Radharani's body, and it is adorned by camphor. Her transcendental anger toward Krishna is embodied as the arrangement of the hair on her head, and the tilak of her great fortune shines on her beautiful forehead. Srimati Radharani's earrings are the holy names of Krishna, as well as the hearing of his name and fame. Her lips are always reddish due to the betel nut of ecstatic affection for Krishna. The black ointment around her eyes is her tricky behavior with Krishna, brought about by love. Her joking with Krishna and gentle smiling constitute the camphor with which she is perfumed. She sleeps in a room with the aroma of pride, and when she lies down in a bed, the transcendental variety of her loving ecstasies is like a jewel locket in the midst of a necklace of separation. Her transcendental breasts are covered by her sari in the form of affection and anger toward Krishna. She has a string instrument known as Kachapi Veena, which is the fame and fortune that actually dries up the faces of the other gopis. She always keeps her hand on the shoulder of a gopi friend who represents her youthful beauty, and although she is highly qualified with so many spiritual assets, she is nonetheless affected by the Cupid known as Krishna. Thus, she is defeated. Srila Raghunath Das Goswami offers his respectful obeisances to Srimati Radharani. Taking a straw in his mouth, indeed he prays, O Gandharvika Srimati Radharani, just as Lord Krishna never rejects a surrendered soul, please don't reject me. This is a summary translation of the Premambhoja Maranda, which Kaviraj Goswami quotes. Verse number 167. Karunyamrita dharaya snana prathama, tarunyamrita dharaya snana madhyama. Srimati Radharani takes her first bath in the shower of nectar of compassion, and she takes her second bath in the nectar of youth. Purport: Srimati Radharani first smears her body with the paste of Krishna's affection for her. She then takes a bath in the water of mercy. After passing the Poganda age from 5 to 10 years, Srimati Radharani first appears as mercy. The second bath is taken at noon in the water of Tarunya Amrita, or the nectar of youth. This is the actual expression of her new youthfulness. Verse 168. Lavanyamrita dharaya tad upari snan nij lajja shyama patasati paridhan. So patta means silk and sati is garments. Paridhan means to wear. After her midday bath, Radharani takes another bath in the nectar of bodily luster, and she puts on the garment of shyness, which is her black silk sari. Purport: over and above the other baths, the bath taken in the afternoon is taken in the nectar of full beauty. This nectar represents the personal qualities of beauty and luster. Thus, there are 3 baths in different kinds of water. Radharani then puts on 2 garments, a lower and an upper garment. The upper garment is pinkish and is her affection and attraction for Krishna, and the lower garment is blackish sari, is her shyness. Verse number 169. Krishna Anuraga Dvitiya Aruna Vasana Pranay Man Kanchulikaya Vaksha Achadana. Srimati Radharani's affection for Krishna is her upper garment, which is pinkish in color. Then she covers herself with another garment composed of affection and anger toward Krishna. Verse 170. Saundarya Kunkuma Sakhi Pranay Chandana Smita Kanti Karpura Tine Ange Vilepana. Srimati Radharani's personal beauty is the reddish powder known as kunkuma. Her affection for her associates is sandalwood bulb, and the sweetness of her smile is camphor. All these combined together are smeared over her body. Verse 171. Krishnera ujjwala rasa rigmada bhara say mrigmade vichitrita kalevara. Conjugal love for Krishna is an abundance of musk, and with the musk her whole body is decorated. Verse 172. Prachanna manavamya dhammila vinyas dhira adhiratmaka guna ange pata vas. Craftiness and covered anger constitutes the arrangement of her hair. The quality of anger due to jealousy is the silk garment covering her body. Verse 173. Raga Tambula Rage Adhar Ujjwala Prema Kautilya Netra Yugale Kajala. Her attachment for Krishna is the reddish color of betel nuts on her brilliant lips. Her double dealings in loving affairs constitute the black ointment around her eyes. Verse 174. Sudipta Satvika Bhava Harshadi Sanchari Ei Sab Bhava Bhushana Sab Ange Bhari. The ornaments decorating her body are the blazing ecstasies of goodness and the constantly existing ecstasies headed by jubilation. All these ecstasies are the ornaments all over her body. Verse 175. Kila Kinchitadi Bhava Vimshati Bhushita Guna Shreni Pushpamala Mala Sarvange Purita. Also ornamenting her body are the 20 kinds of ecstatic symptoms, beginning with the Kila Kinchita. Her transcendental qualities constitute the flower garland hanging in fullness over her body. Purport, the 20 different modes headed by Kila Kinchita are described as follows. First, in connection with the body, there are Bhava, ecstasy, Hava, gestures, and Hela, negligence. In relation to the self, there are Shobha, beauty, Kanti, luster, Deepti, brilliance, Madhurya, sweetness, Pragalbhata, impudence, Audarya, magnanimity, and Dharya, patience. And in relation to nature, there are lila, which is pastimes, Vilasa, enjoyment, Vichitti, breaking off, and Vibhrama, puzzlement. There are no English equivalents for the words Kila Kinchita, Mutaita, and Kutamita. Srimati Radharani's flower garland consists of her qualities and is divided into mental, verbal, and bodily parts. Her attitude of forgiveness and mercy is all mental. Her talks, which are very pleasing to the ear, are verbal. The bodily qualities are age, beauty, luster, and grace. Verse 176. Saubhagya tilak charu lalate ujjwala prema vaichitya ratna ritaya tarala. The tilak of good fortune is on her beautiful broad forehead. Her various loving affairs are a gem, and her heart is the locket. Verse 177. Madhya Vayasa Sakhi Skandhe Kara Nyasa Krishna Lila Manovritti Sakhi Ash Pasha. Srimati Radharani's gopi friends are her mental activities, which are concentrated on the pastimes of Sri Krishna. She keeps her hand on the shoulder of a friend who represents youth. Purport, Radharani's 8 companions, that is the Ash Sakhis, are different varieties of pleasure connected with the pastimes of Krishna. Following those pastimes of Sri Krishna are other activities which are represented by the assistants of the gopis. Verse 178. Nijanga Saurabhalay Garva Parayanaka Tate Vasi Ache Sada Chinte Krishna Sangha. Srimati Radharani's bedstead is pride itself, and it is situated in the abode of her bodily aroma. She's always seated there thinking of Krishna's association. Verse number 179. Krishna nama guna yasha avatamsha kane Krishna nam guna yasha pravaha vachane. Srimati Radharani's earrings are the name, fame and qualities of Lord Krishna. The glories of Lord Krishna's name, fame and qualities are always inundating her speech. Verse 180. Krishna ke karaye shyama rasa madhupan nirantar purna kare krishnera sarvakam. Srimati Radharani induces Krishna to drink the honey of the conjugal relationship. She is therefore engaged in satisfying all the lusty desires of Krishna. Verse 181. Krishnera Vishuddha Prema Ratnera Akar Anupam Gungana Purna Kalevara. Srimati Radharani is a mine filled with valuable jewels of love for Krishna. Her transcendental body is complete with unparalleled spiritual qualities. Verse 182. Ka Krishnasya pranay jani bhuh Srimati Radhikaika kasya prayasi anupam guna Radhikaika nachanya jehmayam keshe drishi taralata Nishthuravatam kuche asya vansha purtyai prabhavati hare radhikaika na chanya. If one asks about the origin of love of Krishna, the answer is that the origin is in Srimati Radharani alone, who is the most dear friend of Krishna. The answer again is Srimati Radharani alone, no one else. Srimati Radharani's hair is very curly, her two eyes are always moving to and fro, and since all transcendental qualities are manifested in Srimati Radharani, she alone is able to fulfill all desires of Krishna, no one else. Purport: this is quotation from Sri Govinda Lilamrit 11.122 by Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami. It is in a verse in the form of questions and answers describing the glories of Srimati Radharani. Verses 183 and 184. Yanra Saubhagya Guna Vanche Satyabhama Yanra Thani Kala Vilas Shikhe Vraja Rama Yanra Saundaryadi Guna Vanche Lakshmi Parvati Yanra Pativrata Dharma Vanche Arundhati. Even Satyabhama, one of the queens of Sri Krishna, desires the fortunate position and excellent qualities of Srimati Radharani. All the gopis learn the art of dressing from Srimati Radharani, and even the goddess of fortune, Lakshmi, and the wife of Lord Shiva, Parvati, desires her beauty and qualities. Indeed, Arundhati, the celebrated chaste wife of Vasishtha, also wants to imitate the chastity and religious principles of Srimati Radharani. Verse 185. Yanra Sadguna Ganane Krishna na paye par Tanra Guna Ganive Kemane Jiva Char. Even Lord Krishna himself cannot reach the limit of transcendental qualities of Srimati Radharani. How then can an insignificant living entity count them? Verse 186. Prabhu kahe Janilun Krishna Radha Prem Tattva Shunite Chahiye Dunhar Vilas Mahatva. Lord Sri Caitanya Mahāprabhu replied, now I have come to understand the truth of the loving affairs between Radha and Krishna. Nonetheless, I will want to hear how both of them gloriously enjoy such love. Verse 187. Rāya kahe Krishna haya dhira lalita Nirantar Kama Krida Yanhar Charita. So Dhira Lalita means a person who can keep his girlfriend always in subjugation by different qualities. Rāya Rāmānanda replied, Lord Krishna is Dhira Lalita, for he can always keep his girlfriends in subjugated state. Thus, his only business is enjoying sense gratification. Purport: we should always remember that Krishna's sense gratification is never to be compared to the sense gratification of the material world. As we have already explained, Krishna's sense gratification is just like gold. The perverted reflection of that sense gratification found in the material world is just like iron. The purport is that Krishna is not impersonal. He has all the desires that are manifest in the perverted reflection within the material world. However, the qualities are different. One is spiritual and the other is material. Just as there is a difference between life and death, there is difference between spiritual sense gratification and material sense gratification. Verse number 188. Vidgado nava tarunyah parihas vishradaha nischinto dhira lalita syat prayah prayasi vashaha. A person who is very cunning and always youthful, expert in joking and without anxiety, and who can keep his girlfriends always subjugated is called Dhir Lalita. This verse is from Bhakti Rasamrit Sindhu 2.1.230. Verse 189. Ratri dina kunje krida kare radha sange kaishora vayasa safala kaila krida range. Day and night Lord Shri Krishna enjoys the company of Srimati Radharani in the bushes of Vrindavan. Thus his pre-youthful age is fulfilled with his affairs with Srimati Radharani. Verse 190. Vacha Suchita Sarvari Rati Kala Pragal Bhayaya Radhikam Vrida Kunchita Lochanam Virachayan Agre Sakhinam Asau Tad Vaksho Ruha Chitra Keli Makari Panditya Param Gatah Kaishoram Safali Karoti Kalyan Kunche Viharam Hari. Thus Lord Shri Krishna spoke of the sexual activities of the previous night. In this way he made Srimati Radharani close her eyes out of shyness. Taking this opportunity, Shri Krishna painted various types of dolphins on her. Thus he became very expert artist for all the gopis. During such pastime, Lord enjoyed the fulfillment of his youth. Purport: this quotation is also found in Bhakti Rasamrit Sindhu 2.1.119. Verse 191. Prabhu kahe eho haya aage kah aar Rai kahe iha va ai buddhi gati nahi aar. Shri Caitanya Mahāprabhu said, this is all right, but please continue. At that time, Rāya Rāmānanda replied, I don't think my intelligence goes beyond this. So this was the one-line purport of this verse. Verse 192. Yeba prema vilas vivarta eka haya taha shuni tumara sukha haya kina haya. Rāya Rāmānanda then informed Shri Caitanya Mahāprabhu that there was another topic known as Prema Vilas Vivarta. You may hear of this from me, Rāmānanda Rāya said, but I do not know whether you will be happy with it or not. Purport: these statements are set forth for our understanding according to Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur in his Amrit Pravah Bhashya. In essence, Sri Caitanya Mahāprabhu told Rāmānanda Rāya, my dear Rāmananda, the explanation you have given about the goal of life and the pastimes of Srimati Radharani and Krishna is certainly the truth. Although this is factual, you can continue telling me more if there is anything more to say. In reply, Rāmānanda Rāya said, I do not think I have anything to say beyond this, but there is a topic known as Prema Vilasa Vivarta, which I may explain to you. I do not know whether it will bring you happiness or not. Verse 193. Eta bali apan krita gita ek gaila preme prabhu swahaste tandra mukha achadila. Saying this, Rāmānanda Rāya began to sing a song he had composed by Shri Caitanya Mahāprabhu out of ecstasy of love of Godhead. Immediately covered Rāmānanda's mouth with his own hand. Purport: the topics that are about to be discussed between Lord Shri Caitanya Mahāprabhu and Rāmānanda Rāya cannot be understood by a materialistic poet, nor by intelligence or material perception. Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur states that the spiritual mellow can be realized only when one is situated on the transcendental platform beyond the material stage of goodness. That platform is called Vishuddha Sattva, Sattvam Vishuddham, Vasudeva Shabditam. Realization of the Vishuddha Sattva platform is beyond the pale of the material world and is not perceived by bodily senses or mental speculation. Our identification with the gross body and subtle body is different from the spiritual understanding. Since the intelligent and mind are material, the loving affairs for Sri Radha and Krishna are beyond their perception. Sarvapadhi vinirmuktam tat paratvena nirmalam. When we are free from all material designations and our senses are completely purified by the bhakti process, we can understand the sense activities of the absolute truth. Rishikena Rishikesha Sevanam Bhaktir Uchyate. The spiritual senses are beyond the material senses. The materialist can think only of the negation of the material variety. He cannot understand spiritual variety. He thinks that spiritual variety simply contradicts material variety and is a negation of or void, but such conceptions cannot even reach the precincts of spiritual realization. The wonderful activities of the gross body and subtle mind are always imperfect. They are below the degree of spiritual understanding and are ephemeral. The spiritual mellow is eternally wonderful and is described as Purna Shuddha Nitya Mukta, that is complete, perfectly pure and eternally liberated from all material conceptions. When we are unable to fulfill our material desires, there is certainly sorrow and confusion. This may be described as vivarta, but in spiritual life there is no sorrow, inevitability or imperfection. Sri Rāmānanda Rāya was expert in realizing the spiritual activities of Srimati Radharani and Krishna, and Rāmānanda's spiritual experience was placed before Sri Caitanya Mahāprabhu as he inquired whether the Lord approved his realization of spiritual truth. These are the three books prominent in this connection. There are three books prominent in this connection. One was written by Bhakti Das Baula and is called Vivarta Vilas. Another was compiled by Jagadananda Pandit and is called Prema Vivarta. Sri Rāmānanda Raya's book is called Prema Vilas Vivarta. The Vivarta Vilas by Bhakta Das Baula is completely different from the other two books. Sometimes a university student or professor tries to study these transcendental literatures and attempts to put forth a critical analysis from the mundane view with the end to receiving degrees like a PhD. Such realization is certainly different from that of Rāmānanda Rāya. If one actually wants to take a PhD degree from Sri Caitanya Mahāprabhu and be approved by Rāmānanda Rāya, he must first become free from all material designations. Sarvapadhi vinirmuktam tat paratvena nirmalam. A person who identifies with his material body cannot understand these talks between Sri Rāmānanda Rāya and Sri Caitanya Mahāprabhu. Man-made religious scriptures and transcendental philosophical talks are quite different. Indeed, there is a gulf of difference between the two. This subject matter has been very diligently described by Sriman Madhvacharya. Since material philosophers are situated in the material conception of life, they are unable to realize the spiritual Prema Vilas Vivarta. They cannot accommodate an elephant upon a dish. Similarly, mundane speculators cannot capture the spiritual elephant within their limited conception. It is just like a frog's trying to measure the Atlantic Ocean by imagining it so many times larger than his well. Materialistic philosophers and Sahajiyas cannot understand the talks between Rāmānanda Rāya and Sri Caitanya Mahāprabhu concerning the pastimes of Sri Radha and Krishna. The only tendency of the impersonalists or the Prakrita Sahajiyas is to face the platform of impersonalism. They cannot understand spiritual variegatedness. Consequently, when Rāmānanda Rāya attempted to sing his own verses, Sri Caitanya Mahāprabhu stopped him by covering his mouth with his own hand. Verse 194. Pahile hi rag nayan bhange bhela, anudina badhala avadhi na gela, na so ramana na ham ramani, dunhu mana manobhava पेशाल जानी ए सखी ए सब प्रेम कहानी कहिनी कानु थामे कहबी विचुरल जानी ना खोंजालून द्युति ना खोंजालून आन दुन्हु केरी मिलने मध्य ता पंच बाण अब सोही विराग तुन्हु भेली दुद्युति सु पुरखा prema ki aichana riti. So this is verse number 194 from the Madhya of chapter 8 from Madhya. So alas, it's translated like this. Alas, before we met, there was an initial attachment between us brought about by an exchange of glances. In this way, attachment evolved. That attachment has gradually grown and there is no limit to it. Now that attachment has become a natural sequence between ourselves, it is not that it is due to Krishna, the enjoyer, nor is it due to me, nor am I the enjoyed. It is not like that. This attachment was made possible by mutual meeting. This mutual exchange of attraction is known as Manobhava or Cupid. Krishna's mind and my mind have merged together. Now, during this time of separation, it is very difficult to explain this loving affairs. My dear friend, though Krishna might have forgotten all these things, you can understand and bring this message to him. But during our first meeting, there was no messenger between us, nor did I request anyone to see him. Indeed, Cupid's 5 arrows were our via Midya. Now, during this separation, that attraction has increased to another ecstatic state. My dear friend, please act as a messenger on my behalf, because if one is in love with such a beautiful person, this is the consequence. Purport: these verses were originally composed and sung by Rāmānanda Rāya himself. Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur suggests that during the time of conjugal enjoyment, the attachment might be compared to Cupid himself. However, during the period of separation, Cupid becomes a messenger of highly elevated love. This is called Prema Vilas Vivarta. When there is separation, conjugal enjoyment itself acts like a messenger, and that messenger was addressed by Srimati Radharani as a friend. The essence of this transaction is that transcendental loving affairs are as relishable during separation as during conjugal enjoyment. When Srimati Radharani was fully absorbed in love of Krishna, she mistook a black tamal tree for Krishna and embraced it. Such a mistake is called Prema Vilasa Vivarta. Verse 195. Radhaya bhavatash chachit jatuni sevadair vilapya karmad yunjan adri nikunja kunjara pate nirdhut bheda brahmam chitraya swayam anvaranaya jayad iha brahmand harmayodare bhuyo bhir navarag hingula bharaya shringar karuh kriti. O my Lord, you live in the forest of Govardhan Hill, and like the king of elephants, you are expert in the art of conjugal love. O Master of the universe, your heart and Srimati Radharani's heart are just like shellac and are now melted in your spiritual perspiration. Therefore, one can no longer distinguish between you and Srimati Radharani. Now you have mixed your newly invoked affection, which is like vermilion, with your melted hearts, and for the benefit of the whole world, you have painted both your hearts red with this great palace of the universe. Purport: this verse is quoted by Rāmānanda Rāya, is included in Srila Rupa Goswami's Ujjwal Nilmani, Sthai Bhav Prakarana 155. Verse 196. Prabhu kahe sadhya vastura avadhi e haya tomar prasade iha janilun Nishchay. Shri Caitanya Mahāprabhu confirmed these verses recited by Sri Rāmānanda Rāya, saying, "This is the limit of goal of human life. Only by mercy have I come to understand it conclusively." Verse 197. Sadhya vastu sadhana vinu keha nahi paye, kripa kari kah Rāya pabara upay. The goal of life cannot be achieved unless one practices the process. Now being merciful upon me, please explain that means by which this goal can be attained. Verse 198. Rai kahe ye kahao se kahi vani, ki kahiye bhal manda kichui na jani. Shri Rāmānanda replied, I do not know what I am saying, but you have made me speak what I have spoken. Be it good or bad, I am simply repeating that message. Verse 199. Tribhuvana madhye aiche haya kaun dhira ye tomar maya nate nate ha ibeka sthira. With these three words, who is so undisturbed that he can remain steady as you manipulate your different energies? Verse 200. Mora mukhe vakta tumi hao shrota atyanta rahasya shuna sadhanera katha. So vakta is the speaker and shrota is the hearer or the listener. So the translation goes like this. Actually, you are speaking through my mouth and at the same time you are listening. This is very mysterious. Anyway, kindly hear the explanation of the process by which goal can be attained. Purport. Srila Sanatana Goswami has advised us to hear about Krishna from a Vaishnav. He has explicitly forbidden us to hear from a Vaishnav. Vaishnav mukhot giranam putam hari kathamritam shravanam naiva kartavyam sarpochistam yatha payaha. Thus quoting from Padma Puran, Srila Sanatana Goswami warns that one should not hear anything about Krishna from a Vaishnav. However great a mundane scholar he may be, milk touched by the lips of a serpent has poisonous effects. Similarly, talks by Krishna given by a Vaishnava are also poisonous. However, since Vaishnava is surrendered to the Supreme Personality of Godhead, his talks are spiritually potent. In the Bhagavad-Gita 10.10, the Supreme Lord says, Tesham satata yuktanam bhajatam priti purvakam dadami buddhi yogam tam yena mam upiyanti te. I was a little bit worried about my battery. It was going low, so I have plugged it. The reading is so mesmerizing, so nice to read and to hear and try to absorb that Radha and Krishna is all spiritual subject. So we should always hear from a Vaishnav, and it cannot be explained by anyone apart from our great acharyas. And even Mahāprabhu stopped Rāmānanda Rai from singing some of his verses Rāmānanda Rai had composed, because still the mind is material for all the material beings in this world. Our mind is not spiritual, so this subject matter is way beyond. Only a Vaishnav can make it simplify, just like Prabhupada has done for us in the purports. So Bhagavad-Gita 10.10, the Lord says, going back to the reading, Desham satati yuktanam bhajatam priti purvakam dadami buddhi yogam tam yena mam upiyanti te. To those who are constantly devoted to worshipping me with love, I give the understanding by which they can come to me. When a pure Vaishnava speaks, he speaks perfectly. How is this? His speech is managed by Krishna himself from within the heart. Srila Rāmānanda Rai accepts this benediction from Sri Caitanya Mahāprabhu. Therefore, he admits that whatever he was speaking was not derived from his own intelligence. Rather, everything was coming from Sri Caitanya Mahāprabhu. According to the Bhagavad-Gita 15.15 Sarvasya chaham hridi sannivishto mattah smritir jnanam apohanam cha vedesh cha sarver aham eva vedyo vedanta krid vedvid eva chaham. I am seated in everyone's heart, and from me come remembrance, knowledge and forgetfulness. By all the Vedas I am to be known. Indeed, I am the compiler of the Vedanta, and I am the knower of the Vedas. All intelligence emanates from the Supreme Personality of Godhead, the Supersoul within the heart of everyone. Non-devotees want to ask the Supreme Lord for sense gratification. Therefore, non-devotees come under the influence of Maya, the illusory energy. A devotee, however, is directed by the Supreme Personality of Godhead and comes under the influence of Yogmaya. Consequently, there is a gulf of difference between statements made by a devotee and those made by a non-devotee. So, this last paragraph of the purport which Prabhupada has written is so important to understand, that the intelligence is coming from Super Soul, which is situated in everyone's heart, and we know Super Soul is Supreme Personality, is coming from the intelligence coming from the Supreme Personality of Godhead, the Super Soul within the everyone's heart. So the non-devotees who are asking the Supreme Lord about the Maya, about the sense gratification, so therefore they come under the influence of Maya, the illusory energy. And the devotee who is asking Lord is always not asking, the devotee is always directed by the Supreme Lord, and he comes under the influence of Yogamaya. So the former, the non-devotee, is coming under the influence of Mahamaya, and a devotee is coming under the influence of Yogamaya. So consequently, the statements they will be making will be totally different. Verse number 201. Radha Krishnera lila e ati gudatara dasya vatsalyadi bhave nahaya gochara. The pastimes of Radha and Krishna are very confidential. They cannot be understood through the mellows of servitude, fraternity, or parental affection. Verse 202. Sabe ek sakhi ganera ihan adhikara sakhi haite haya e lilar vistar. Actually, the only gopis have the right to appreciate these transcendental pastimes, and only from them can these pastimes be expanded. Verse 203. Sakhi vina e lila pusht nahi haya, sakhi lila vistariya sakhi aswadya. Without the gopis, these pastimes between Radha and Krishna cannot be nourished. Only by their cooperation are such pastimes broadcast. It is their business to taste the mellows. Verse 204 and 205 together. Sakhi vina e lilai anera nahi gati, sakhi bhave ye tanre kare anugati, Radha Krishna kunjesh seva sadhya se paya, se sadhya paite ar naika upaya. Naika is there is not. Without the help of the gopis, one cannot enter into these pastimes. Only one who worships the Lord in the ecstasy of the gopis, following in their footsteps, can engage in the service of Shri Radha and Krishna in the bushes of Vrindavan. Only then can one understand the conjugal love between Radha and Krishna. There is no other procedure for understanding. Purport: the means for returning home, for going back to Godhead, is devotional service, but everyone has a different taste in the Lord's service. One may be inclined to serve the Lord in servitude, which is Dasyaras, fraternity, which is Sakhyaras, or parental love, which is Vatsalyaras. But none of these can enable one to enter into the service of the Lord in conjugal love. To attain such service, one has to follow in the footsteps of the gopis in the ecstasy of Sakhi Bhav. then only one can understand the transcendental mellow of conjugal love. In the Ujjwal Neelamani Sakhi Prakarana 1, Srila Rupa Goswami advises, Prema Lila Viharanam Samyag Vistarika Sakhi Vishrambha Ratna Peti Cha. One who expands the conjugal love of Krishna and his enjoyment among the gopis is called a Sakhi. Such a person is a confidential gopi in the conjugal affairs. Such assistants are like jewels in the form of Krishna's confidants. The actual business of the Sakhis is described thus in Ujjwal Neelamani Sakhi Prakarana 88 to 91. Meetaha Prema Gunot Kirtis Tayor Asakti Karita Abhisaro Dvayor Eva Sakhyaha Krishne Samarpanam Narmash Vasana Nepathyam Hridayod Ghat Patvam Chidra Samvrittir Etasyaha Patya Adeha Parivanchana Shiksha Sangamanam Kale Sevanam Vyajanadhibhi Dvayor Upalambah Sandesh Preshanam Tatha Naika Prana Samraksha Prayatna Dyaha Sakhi Kriya. In the conjugal pastimes of Krishna, Krishna is the hero, which is Nayak. Radhika is the heroine, she is the Naika. The first business of the gopis is to chant the glories of both the hero and the heroine. Their second business is to gradually create a situation in which the hero may be attracted to the heroine and vice versa. The third business is to induce both of them to approach each other. The fourth business is to surrender unto Krishna. The fifth is to create a jovial atmosphere. The sixth is to give them assurance to enjoy their pastimes. The seventh is to dress and decorate both the hero and the heroine. The eighth to show their expertise in expressing their desires. The ninth to conceal the faults of the heroine, and the 10th to cheat their respective husbands and relatives. The 11th to educate, the 12th to enable both the hero and the heroine to meet at the proper time, the 13th to fan the hero and heroine, the 14th to sometime reproach the hero and heroine, and 15th to set conversations in motion, and the 16th to protect the heroine by various means. Some materialistic sahajiyas who cannot actually understand the pastimes of Radha and Krishna manufacture their own lifestyles without referring to authority. Such sahajiyas are called Sakhi Bhekhi, and sometimes they are called Gaura Nagari. They believe that material body which is fit to be eaten by jackals and dogs is enjoyable for Krishna. Consequently, they artificially decorate the material body to attract Krishna, thinking themselves Sakhis, but Krishna is never attracted by the artificial grooming of the material body. As far as Srimati Radharani and her gopis are concerned, their bodies, homes, dresses, ornaments, endeavors and activities are all spirituals. All of these are meant to satisfy the spiritual senses of Krishna. Indeed, there are so many, so pleasing and endearing to Krishna that he is subjugated by the influence of Srimati Radharani and her friends. They have nothing to do with anything mundane within the 14 planetary systems of the universe. Although Krishna is attractive to everyone, he is nonetheless attracted by the gopis and Srimati Radharani. One should not be misled by mental concoctions, supposing his material body to be perfect and deeming oneself as a Sakhi. This is something like Ahangra Hopasana, that is, a Mayavadi's worship of his own body as the supreme. Srila Jiva Goswami has cautioned mundaners to abstain from such conceptions. He also warns that thinking oneself one of the associates of the Supreme without following in the footsteps of gopis is as offensive as thinking oneself of oneself the Supreme. Such thinking is aparadh. One has to practice living in Vrindavan by hearing about the talks of the gopis with Krishna. However, one should not consider himself a gopi, for this is offensive. Verse 206. Vibhur api sukha rupaha swaprakasho api bhavaha kshanam api nahi radha krishnayor ya rite swaha pravahati rasa pushtim chid vibhutir iveshah shrayati napadam asam kah sakhinam rasa jnanaha. The pastimes of Sri Radha and Krishna are self-effulgent, their happiness personified, unlimited and all-powerful. Even so, the spiritual humors of such pastimes are never complete without the gopis, the Lord's personal friends. The Supreme Personality of Godhead is never complete without his spiritual potencies. Therefore, unless one takes shelter of the gopis, one cannot enter into the company of Radha and Krishna, who can be interested in their spiritual pastimes without taking their shelter. Purport: this is a quotation from Govinda Lilamrit 10.17. Verse 207. Sakhira swabhav eka akathya kathana Krishna saha nija lilaya nahi sakhira mana. There is an inexplicable fact about the natural inclinations of the gopis. The gopis never want to enjoy themselves with Krishna personally. Verse 208. Krishna sahe radhikar lila ye karaya nij sukha haite tate koti sukha paye. The happiness of the gopis increases 10 million times when they serve to engage Shri Radha and Krishna in their transcendental pastimes. Verse 209. Radhara Swarupa Krishna Prema Kalplata Sakhi Gana Haya Tar Pallav Pushpapata. By nature, Srimati Radharani is just like a creeper of love of Godhead, and the gopis are the twigs, flowers, and leaves of that creeper. Verse 210. Krishna Lilamrita Yadi Latake Sinchaya Nija Sukha Haite Pallava Dera Koti Sukha Haya. Sincha is similar to the Hindi word Sinchana, like we say. It means to sprinkle or give water. When the nectar of Krishna's pastimes is sprinkled on that creeper, the happiness derived by the twigs, flowers, and leaves is 10 million times greater than that derived by the creeper itself. Purport: in his Amrit Pravaha Bhashya, Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur states, Srimati Radharani is the creeper of love of Godhead, and the gopis are exactly like twigs, flowers, and leaves. When water is sprinkled on the creeper, the twigs, flowers, and leaves indirectly receive all the benefits of the creeper itself. But water sprinkled directly on the twigs, leaves, and flowers is not as effective as water sprinkled on the creeper's root. The gopis are not as pleased when this directly mix with Krishna as when they serve to unite Srimati Radharani with Krishna. Their transcendental pleasure lies in uniting them. Verse 211. Sakhyaha Shri Radhikaya Vraja Kumuda Vidhur Hladini Nama Shakteha Saramsha Prema Valayaha Kislay Dal Pushpadi Tulyaha Swatulyaha Ikatyam Krishna Lilamrita Rasa Nichayer Ullastayam Amushyam Jatulasah Swasakech Sekach Chat Gunam Adhikam Santi Yattanna Chitram. Kisla is the newly grown. All the gopis, the personal friends of Srimati Radharani, are equal to her. Krishna is pleasing to the inhabitants of Vrajabhumi, just as the moon is pleasing to the lotus flower. His pleasure-giving potency is known as Ahladini, which the active principle of which the active principle is Srimati Radharani. She is compared to a creeper with newly grown flowers and leaves. When the nectar of Krishna's pastimes is sprinkled on Srimati Radharani, all her friends, the gopis, immediately appreciate the pleasure 100 times more than if they were sprinkled themselves. Actually, this is not at all wonderful. Purport, this is also a verse from Govind Lilamrit 10.16. Verse 212. Yadyapi Sakhira Krishna Sangame Nahi Mana Tathapi Radhika Yatne Karan Sangama. Although the gopis, Srimati Radharani's friends, do not desire to enjoy themselves directly with Krishna, Srimati Radharani makes a great endeavor to induce Krishna to enjoy himself with the gopis. Verse 213. Nana Chale Krishna Preri Sangam Karaye Atma Krishna Sanga Haite Koti Sukha Paye. Presenting various pleas for the gopis, Srimati Radharani sometimes sends the gopis to Krishna just to enable them to associate with him directly. At such times, she enjoys a happiness 10 million times greater than that enjoyed through direct association. Verse 214. Anyonye Vishuddha Prema Kare Rasa Pushta Tan Sabar Prema Dekhi Krishna Haya Tushta. The transcendental mellow is nourished by the mutual behavior in transcendental love of Godhead. When Lord Krishna sees how the gopis have developed pure love for him, he becomes very satisfied. Purport, Srimati Radharani and the gopis are not interested in their personal happiness derived from association with Krishna. Rather, they become happy by seeing one another associate with Krishna. In this way, their dealings are further nourished by love of Godhead, and seeing this, Krishna is very pleased. Verse 215. Sahaja Gopira Prema Nahe Prakrita Kama Krida Samne Tar Kahi Kama Nam. It is to be noted that natural characteristics of the gopi is to love the Supreme Lord. Their lusty desire is not to be compared to material lust. Nonetheless, because their desire sometimes appear to resemble material lust, their transcendental love for Krishna is sometimes described as lust. Purport. Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur says that material lust should never be attributed to Krishna, who is full of transcendental knowledge. Material lust cannot be engaged in the service of the Lord, for it is applicable to materialists, not to Krishna. Only prema or love of Godhead is applicable for the material satisfaction of Krishna. Prema is full service rendered unto the Lord. The lusty affairs of the gopis actually constitute the topmost love of Godhead, because the gopis never act for their own personal satisfaction. They are simply pleased by engaging their other gopis in the service of the Lord. The gopis derive more transcendental pleasure from indirectly engaging other gopis in the service of Krishna than from engaging in his service themselves. That is the difference between the material lust and the love of Godhead. Lust applies to the material world, and love of Godhead applies only to Krishna. So the love of Godhead appears as perverted form, as lust in this material world, and we are all aiming to go back to Godhead one day and to get the love of the Godhead and to serve the God. Verse 216. Premeva Gopa Ramanam Kam iti agamat pratham iti udvadayo api etam vanchanti bhagavad priyaha. All the dealings of the gopis with Krishna are on the platform of pure love of Godhead. Such dealings are sometimes considered to be lusty, but because they are completely spiritual, Uddhav and all other dearmost devotees of the Lord desire to participate in them. Purport, this is a quotation from Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu 1.2.285. Verse 217, Nijendriya Sukha Hetu Kamera Tatparya Krishna Sukha Tatparya Gopi Bhava Varya. Lusty desires are experienced when one is concerned with his own personal sense gratification. The mood of the gopis is not like that. Their only desire is to satisfy the senses of Krishna. Verse 218, Nijendriya Sukha Vancha Nahi Gopikar Krishna Sukha Dite Kare Sangam Vihar. Among the gopis there is not a pinch of desire for sense gratification. Their only desire is to give pleasure to Krishna, and this is why they mingle with him and enjoy with him. Verse 219, Yatte Sujat Charanam Buruham Staneshu Bhita Shaneh Priya Dadimahi Karkasheshu Tena Tavim Atasi Tad Vyathate Nakim Svit Kurnapadibhir Brahmati Dhir Bhavad Ayusham Naha. All the gopis said, Dear Krishna, we carefully hold your delicate lotus feet upon our hard breast, but when you walk into the forest, your soft lotus feet are pricked by small bits of stone. We fear that this is paining you, since you are our life and soul. Our minds are very much disturbed when your lotus feet are pained. This is a quotation from Srimad Bhagavatam 10.31.19. Verse 220, Se gopi bhavamrite yandra lobhaya veda dharma loka tyaji se Krishna bhajaya. One who is attracted by that ecstatic love of gopis does not care about popular opinion or the regulative principles of Vedic life. Rather, he completely surrenders unto Krishna and renders service unto him. Verse 221, Raganuga marge tanre bhaje ye jana se jana paye vraje vrajendra nandana. If one worships the Lord on the path of spontaneous love and goes to Vrindavan, he receives the shelter of Rajendra Nandan, the son of Nanda Maharaj. Purport, in all there are 64 items listed for the rendering of service unto Krishna, and these are the regulative principles enjoined in the Shastras and given by the spiritual master. One has to serve Krishna according to these regulative principles. But if one develops spontaneous love for Krishna as exhibited in the activities of those who live in Vrajabhumi, one attains the platform of Raganuga Bhakti. One who has developed this spontaneous love is eligible for elevation to the platform enjoyed by the inhabitants of Vrajabhumi. In Vrajabhumi, there are no regulative principles set forth for Krishna's service. Rather, everything is carried out in spontaneous, natural love for Krishna. There is no question of following the principles of the Vedic system. Such principles are followed within this material world, and as long as one is on the material platform, he has to execute them. However, spontaneous love of Krishna is transcendental. It may seem that regulative principles are being violated, but the devotee is on the transcendental platform. Such service is called Gunatita or Nirguna, for it is not contaminated by the three modes of material nature. Verse 222, Vraja lokera kona bhava lena ye bhaje bhava yogya deha pana Krishna paye vraje. In his liberated stage, the devotee is attracted by one of the five humors in the transcendental loving service of the Lord. As he continues to serve the Lord in that transcendental mood, he attains a spiritual body to serve Krishna in Golok, Vrindavan. So this verse is so important. It just tells us that in the liberated stage, a devotee is attracted by one of the five humors in the transcendental loving service of the Lord. And when one continues to do that service in that transcendental mood, then the devotee attains a spiritual body to serve Krishna in Golok Vrindavan. So let's read one more verse. They are so beautiful. So oh, they have. I haven't realized 1 hour has already gone, but I will read this one last verse for today. Verse number 223 from the 8th chapter of the Madhya Lila of Sri Caitanya Charitamrita. Tahate Drishtant Upanishad Shruti Gana Rag Marge Bhaji Paila Vrajendra Nandana. Those saintly persons who represent the Upanishads are vivid examples of this. By worshipping the Lord in the path of spontaneous love, they attain the lotus feet of Rajendra Nandan, the son of Nanda Maharaj. Purport: in the Golok Vrindavan planet, Krishna's servants are headed by Raktaka and Patraka. Krishna's friends are headed by Sridham, Subal and others. There are also elderly gopis and the cowherd men headed by Nanda Maharaj, Mother Yashoda and others. All of these personalities are eternally engaged in the loving service of the Lord in accordance with their specific attachments for Krishna. One who wants to return home to serve the Lord directly may be attracted to Krishna as a servant, friend, father or mother. If a person continuously serves Krishna during this life in a particular ecstasy, upon giving up the material body, he attains a spiritual body suitable for serving Krishna in terms of his particular attachment. One may serve as a friend, servant, father or mother. In the same way, one who wants to serve Krishna in conjugal love can attain a body under the guidance of the gopis. In this connection, the most vivid example is provided by those saintly personalities known as the Shrutis, who represent the Upanishads. The Shrutis understood that without serving Krishna and following in the footsteps of the gopis, there would be no possibility of their entering the kingdom of God and serving Krishna in the mood of conjugal love. Therefore, they engaged in spontaneous loving service unto Krishna and followed in the footsteps of gopis. So we will continue reading from verse number 224 next time from this 8th chapter. Thank you for joining. Hari Om Tat Sat. Hare Krishna. Tomorrow is Balram Jayanti or Balram Purnima and also Raksha Bandhan. So we wish you all a blissful day ahead. Hare Krishna. Shri Prabhupada ki Jai. Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami ki Jai.